My useless sister needs to sell her failing company to me. That's what my brother said. Into a mic. At a packed rooftop promotion party thrown in his honor. Laughter followed, tight, smug, corporate. My name is Elena. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever stood in a room full of your own family and felt like a stain on the rug, something they wanted to clean up before the next photo? I had come to support him. Genuinely. He'd just made junior partner at some Manhattan investment firm. Ivy League MBA. Polished speech. Tailored suit. I gave him a congratulatory hug, handed him a bottle of vintage bourbon, and then watched him stab me in the chest with a smile. Let's be honest, he continued. My sister's little app is barely hanging on. I'll be doing her a favor. Right, Dad? Dad raised his glass. Let her go back to writing poems or whatever she studied. We need real strategy now. The crowd chuckled again. I didn't speak. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded slowly, turned away from the balcony lights, and walked out. No one followed me. No one asked how I felt. I guess it was easier to believe the lie than admit they never really knew who I was. At midnight, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by sticky notes, code drafts, and a half-eaten cupcake I had planned to gift him, with a handwritten card that said, "For every sibling who grew from your shadow." I tore it in half. Then I opened my laptop, checked the back end, refreshed the numbers, and smiled. Because they didn't know. They didn't know I had just closed a licensing deal, one that would integrate my platform into a nationwide chain of health clinics. They didn't know I was already profitable, that the failing company they mocked had been silently thriving because I chose to build quietly while they shouted from balconies. They thought I'd roll over, that I'd hand over the code, the patents, the purpose, like I owed them proof of worth. But the next morning, when they showed up at my office to take over, they didn't find desperation. They found locks changed, lawyers waiting, and a press release already live announcing something that turned their smug little smile into absolute silence. At exactly 9:02 a.m., they walked in like kings. My brother in his pressed navy suit, flanked by two interns who looked fresh out of a TED Talk, holding leather briefcases like they were about to buy history. Dad trailed behind, smug and casual, sipping his overpriced coffee, the same way he sipped away my self-worth growing up. I was sitting behind my desk, cool, quiet, controlled, wearing the same black turtleneck they once joked made me look like a barista with too many opinions. They didn't even greet me, just walked in, arms outstretched like it was already theirs. Let's make this quick, my brother said, dropping a printed one-page offer on my desk. We're prepared to absorb the company's debt and give you a small equity slice. You'll stay on for a transition period, 6 months max. Dad nodded approvingly. See, he's being generous. You're lucky he's not just shutting it down. I glanced at the paper. One sentence. 0 valuation accuracy. No mention of IP. No clue what they were actually stepping into. Absorb the debt? I said slowly, pushing the paper back across the desk. You mean the non-existent debt? The company that's been cash flow positive for 11 months straight? My brother blinked. What? I opened my laptop and spun it toward them, a dashboard glowing with live analytics. Real-time user growth. Licensing revenue. 3 major health networks on board. And most importantly, a headline from that morning's Tech Chronicle. Underdog app disrupts health tech sector. Founder Elena Rivera lands $4.2 million round from Vision Capital. The silence was glorious. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen like the truth would shrink if he glared hard enough. That's fake. You never told us. Exactly, I said. Because I knew if I did, you'd try to own it without understanding it. Like always. My brother's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. That's when I handed him the second folder. Legal documents. Trademark registrations. A cease and desist draft addressed to him, pre-written the night before, just in case. You made a public offer last night to purchase my company, I said calmly. It was unsolicited, unprofessional, and defamatory. If you make another public statement, I'll sue for attempted hostile acquisition and reputational damage. Dad stood there, speechless. You came to take over, I said, rising slowly. But what you actually did was walk into the headquarters of a company you have zero rights to and try to turn your failure to believe in me into leverage. I walked to the door and held it open. Now you can leave like businessmen, or security can escort you like liabilities. They walked, and this time, I didn't cry, because for the first time in my life, they weren't louder. I was louder with results. By noon, the news had already hit every inbox that mattered. Vision Capital backs Elena Rivera's health tech platform in $4.2 million deal. From dropout to disruptor. The woman behind the next big healthcare breakthrough. While my brother scrambled to save face and Dad ducked calls from their country club buddies, my phone rang with something much more satisfying. Opportunity. A senior executive from Everpulse Health, the same billion-dollar network that had once ghosted my emails, was now suddenly very interested. Elena, he said, we'd like to revisit our last conversation. Translation? You ignored me when I was invisible. Now that I have weight, you want to dance. I kept it polite, professional, but I didn't forget. Not the investor who said, maybe your brother should pitch instead. Not the client who referred to me as the artsy sibling with no grit. I didn't forget because I don't need to. My success didn't grow in spite of them. It grew under them, like roots under concrete, quiet, relentless, patient. By late afternoon, my inbox had over 70 unread messages, interview requests, podcast invites, partnership offers. One subject line stood out. Urgent. Joint statement suggestion from family? I clicked. From my brother's assistant. Not even him, directly. We'd like to suggest a joint press release, clarifying the confusion from the promotion party and framing this moment as a collaborative sibling success story. I stared at the email, read it twice, then closed it. No reply. They wanted to soften the story, not for me, but for themselves. They didn't mind erasing me when I was the dropout. But now that I was headline material, they wanted back in the frame. I booked a solo interview instead. That evening, sitting across from a journalist who asked, how did it feel to be underestimated by your own family? I didn't dodge the question. I said, it felt like a storm I had to walk through without an umbrella, but I learned to dance in it. And when she asked what I'd say to my brother now, I gave her the truth. I'd say thank you for showing me that silence isn't weakness. It's a strategy. Because while they were busy laughing on balconies, I was building a rocket in the basement. And now? I wasn't just flying. I was out of their reach. A week after the headlines, I got a forwarded invite. Dad's 60th birthday. Private dinner. Black tie only. Hosted at his favorite steakhouse, with close family and respected guests only. No seat for me. I didn't even make the BCC list. My name was scratched from the menu, but my company? Featured. Listed in his bio as a proud example of entrepreneurial spirit within the Rivera family. The irony? They refused to claim me in person, but had no problem milking my success for bragging rights. It wasn't just insulting. It was predictable. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I didn't show up to beg for a chair. I didn't email. Didn't argue. I simply made a call. One that took less than 5 minutes. You see, the Rivera birthday dinner was being held at the Langston, a venue recently bought out by a luxury hospitality group I had just signed a health tech integration deal with. They knew me. They respected me. So when I explained, very calmly, that my father's party was about to use my image without permission, they didn't blink. They canceled the reservation. Last minute. Without negotiation. When Dad's assistant called the restaurant to complain, she was told, unfortunately, the guest of honor's daughter is a client of ours, and she has final approval on all corporate branding. They moved the party to a second-choice location, a smaller, less glamorous venue across town. The same one my cousin used for her engagement dinner last year. No string quartet. No rooftop skyline. No brand-friendly aesthetics for the photos they'd planned to post online. And me? I booked a private dinner of my own. Not for revenge. For remembrance. I invited my lead engineer, my product manager, the UX intern who once cried when someone finally took her ideas seriously. We dined on our own terms, laughed from our bellies, shared a toast that meant something. To the misfits, I said, who were never invited to the party because we were too busy building the future. That night, I received a passive-aggressive text from Dad. "I heard what you did. You're making this personal." I didn't respond, because it was never personal. It was positional, and I finally chose to sit where I belonged. Not at their table. At one I built myself. 3 days after the ruined dinner, I got an email from a glossy business magazine. They were featuring a story on modern family enterprises, and apparently, my father had pitched himself as the patriarch of an entrepreneurial dynasty. The article draft was attached. There it was in print. With his son leading a major finance firm and his daughter's tech company booming, Mr. Rivera is the proud architect of a family legacy grounded in vision and leadership. Architect? He hadn't written a single line of code, hadn't invested $1. The only thing he ever built was a wall between me and belief in myself. I stared at the article. My picture, taken from a public source, used without permission. My story reshaped. My name, wrapped in a ribbon and tied to a man who didn't clap at my graduation because I didn't have one. I could have ignored it, let it go. But erasure in a silk suit is still erasure. So I picked up the phone and called the editor.
"Hi.
I'm Elena Rivera, the daughter mentioned in your draft." A pause. Then, "Oh, yes, your father's assistant coordinated that. We'd love to set up a quote." "No," I interrupted, calm but firm. "What you printed isn't true. My father didn't help me build this company. In fact, he called it a waste of time up until last month." Silence. "I'm happy to go on record, but only with the truth. Otherwise, I'll have my legal team address the unauthorized use of my likeness." By that evening, the draft was revised. The article now read, "Elena Rivera, founder and CEO of Oralink, built her company from the ground up with no family capital or guidance, redefining what a self-made story looks like." And just like that, the narrative shifted. Not in my favor in realities. Because here's the part my family never understood. They treated my silence as weakness, not strategy. They thought if I wasn't shouting, I must be shrinking. But I wasn't hiding. I was sharpening. That week, I gave a keynote at a Women in Tech Summit. Thousands in the room. Cameras.
Lights.
I told the audience, you don't have to come from power to create it. You don't need legacy to build impact. Sometimes, the ones who ignore you the longest give you the loudest reason to succeed. The applause wasn't polite. It was visceral, because every woman in that room had been the afterthought at someone else's table. But I was living proof that when they cut you out of the photo, you make your own frame and hang it where the world can't miss it. Friday afternoon. Sky gray. Phone on silent. I was deep in wireframe reviews with my team when the receptionist pinged me. "Your father's here. Wants a word." At first, I thought it was a mistake. But there he was, standing in the glass lobby of my headquarters. Same man who once told me, "You'll never get far without structure, or a man to structure it for you." Now he stood alone, hands tucked into his blazer like he didn't know what to do with them. I buzzed him in. He walked in slowly, scanning the clean, minimalist lines of the place like it was foreign territory because it was. I hadn't invited him here. Not once. This wasn't a space he built. This was soil I cultivated after being exiled from his garden. "Nice place," he said, trying to be casual. I nodded. "It is." He cleared his throat. I figured it was time we had a real talk. I gestured to the seating area. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't belong in the room, and he didn't. "I saw the article," he said after a long pause. "Didn't realize you were going to go that public." "You made it public," I replied, "when you pitched me as part of your legacy without asking." He sighed. "That wasn't my intent. But it was your instinct," I said. "To center yourself. To act like my work reflects you when all it reflects is the absence I had to outgrow." The weight of it landed. Heavy. Quiet. "I wasn't perfect," he muttered. "But I did what I thought was right." "No," I said, leaning forward. You did what was easy. You praised the son who mirrored you and dismissed the daughter who challenged you. You made love conditional. And when I succeeded, you tried to rewrite the credits. Silence again. Then, finally, he looked up, eyes not proud, not angry, empty. I don't know how to fix this. You don't. He blinked. I stood. You don't get to rewrite the story now. You don't get to wear my success like a badge. But you do get to watch it. From the audience. Like everyone else. I offer my hand. Not to shake. To guide him out. He stood slowly, nodded once, and walked toward the elevator. Right before the doors closed, he turned. I underestimated you. I know. The doors shut, and I exhaled something I didn't even realize I'd been holding for years. Because that wasn't an apology, but it was a sentence. And I was done living between their commas. 2 days later, I got a text from my brother. First contact since the promotion party where he mocked me in front of hundreds and tried to turn my company into his punchline. Congrats on the press. Dinner sometime? Just us. I stared at it. The same brother who used to unplug my laptop mid-project when we were kids just to teach me resilience. The one who called my startup cute until the day it eclipsed his bonus. But I replied, sure. Your office. Noon. I arrived with nothing but my phone, my silence, and a single printed article, the one where his own firm's analysts had reevaluated my valuation. He greeted me with that smug Ivy League smile he used to weaponize. But it faltered the moment he realized I hadn't come to reconcile. I'll cut to it, he said, trying to stay in control. You're winning right now. That's great. But these moments pass. Investors shift. Boards change. You need someone who understands that side of the game. I can help you scale. I tilted my head. Scale? I said. You mean the way you scaled that fund that just lost its third client? He flinched. I slid the article across the table. He didn't touch it. You know what's funny? I said. You tried to own what I built, and now you want to guide it because you finally realized I passed you. Quietly. Permanently. He scoffed. Don't let your ego kill momentum, Elena. My ego? I smiled. I was never allowed one. You and Dad made sure of that. But now that I've got some altitude, I'm keeping my hands on the wheel. He leaned back, frowning. I stood to leave. You see, when you announced that I'd be selling my failing company to you, you made a mistake. He raised an eyebrow. You thought I was playing to win your approval. I never was. I was playing to own my freedom. You don't know what that looks like because you've been playing to impress Dad your whole life. I walked toward the door. He called after me. So that's it? You won't even hear me out. I paused. Not until you say my name without sounding like it's attached to an asterisk. Then I left. Later that night, I checked LinkedIn. He'd posted a vague inspirational quote. Sometimes the loudest one in the room is the most afraid. No likes. No traction, because the loudest one in his room had already left and taken the spotlight with her. 6 months later, I stood on a stage in San Francisco, looking out at a room of 500 founders, most of them women, most of them, like me, told they didn't belong at the table unless they were bringing the napkins. My keynote was titled, Built from the Discarded, and I told the truth, about being the sibling who was always introduced with qualifiers. About the father who never asked what I did, just how it made him look. About the promotion party where I was publicly offered up like a pity asset, and the silence that followed when I turned out to be the real storm. The applause was long, not polite, not curated, earned. That night, as I rode the elevator back up to my suite, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Saw the live stream. You were poised, professional, maybe a little harsh? But still, congrats. I stared at the message for a moment, then locked my phone without responding. Because I didn't need their commentary. I had clarity. When I opened the door to my suite, a small group from my team was already waiting, champagne chilling, phones buzzing with partnership offers from 2 major health networks that had just watched my talk. Any regrets? My lead developer asked, handing me a glass. I shook my head. No, I said. I used to want their respect, but now I've got something better. What's that? Distance. And a view. We clinked glasses. That night, I walked out onto the balcony alone, the wind brushing past my face like a curtain lifting on the final act. I thought of the party where I was humiliated, of the office where I shut down their takeover, of the article, the uninvited dinner, the meetings they tried to twist back into control, and how none of it worked, because you can't inherit what you never built. You can't lead something you never carried. And you can't claim someone's story, not when they've already written the ending. That ending? It didn't include apologies. It included ownership, not just of a company, of my voice, of my value, of my name, without an asterisk. So, if you ever hear someone call me the dropout again, let them. Because now, when they come looking for the next big thing, they're walking through doors I built, under a name they tried to bury, and every light above them shines because I flipped the switch.